Thank you, Jeremy, for coming on the show with me. It's always a pleasure to speak to somebody from across the pond. But so, where are you? You're not in America. You're in Mexico, aren't you?
Yeah, I was born in the US, but I live in Mexico now in Oaxaca on the coast. It's gorgeous. I really like it.
Yeah, yeah. So, how long have you been there for?
8 months now. I've been to Mexico a few times in my life. I like it a lot, and I always felt called there. Like even in like school, I took Spanish classes, and I felt like I would need to know Spanish at some point later in life. So as a child, I took those classes, and it's been very useful to know that now. So yeah, I've been here about 8 months, and I'll plan to stay indefinitely because I really like it. It's a place I was looking for.
Yeah, you feel at home.
I do, yeah. I was living in Austin, Texas for like 11 years and
Mm.
had a lot of like heart energy and great community and spiritual. Like a lot of my teachers were there, but it felt like that was changing a lot in like 2019 and then 2020. So I was looking for where to go next. I went to California for a while, and now this is what I found here is what I was looking for. So I think I'll stay for quite a while.
Excellent, excellent. So that begs the question with me always: what star sign are you? What's your astrological sign?
Well, I use the Vedic astrology, and it's
Yeah.
my whole work is Quietmind Astrology and my podcast. And so in Western astrology, I do have a Aries sun, and it also is the same in Vedic astrology. So it's Sun and Aries in both.
Oh, okay. So tell me about Aries. Tell me about the Aries traits. I think I know a little bit, but tell me a bit more. Give me a bit more of a that will give me a
Yeah.
bit more of an inkling about. Are you typical of your sign?
Yeah, yeah. It's, and there's like I always you got to look at the whole picture and not just
Mm,
the one thing. And I think people miss so much when they do this. It's almost like, if you look at a map of the world and you just point to one place on the map and say, "Oh, it's like a desert." You point to Arizona in the US and it's a desert. And you say the world is a desert. That's kind of like if you look at somebody's chart and say, "Oh, your sun's in Aries, so you're ambitious, you're driven, you're hardworking, you start things." These things are true for me, but it's so much deeper when you look at the whole picture and everything else in the
mm,
chart. It's just like looking at a world map. It's like there's rainforests, there's jungles, there's deserts, there's oceans, there's mountains, and we all have all those qualities within us, I think. And that's what I love to do is just like discover how that expresses for people.
yeah. So is that what actually brought you to astrology? I mean, I would imagine it's that sort of sense of adventure, exploration, because it's such a vast subject, isn't it? I mean, I can remember when I was a teenager, astrology was the first sort of opening into the magical arts for me, and that led me to the tarot, and that's where I sort of focus for many years and still do. But astrology was the doorway to that, and I was absolutely fascinated with Linda Goodman's sun signs book, and read all my friends' signs and was just fascinated with it. But at the same time, was completely overwhelmed by the enormity of the the complexity of it all, because it is complex, isn't it?
Right.
Um, so what led you to it? What?
Yeah. Yeah. Even as a little kid, my parents were talking about ghosts and scary movies and astrology and karma and all these like energetic things, and they didn't have a whole lot of spirituality to it. They didn't know about, the depths of it. But there was this thing of like, if I stay up late and hang out with the adults, we might start talking about all this mysterious stuff and like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
saw the ghost and what's your sun sign?" And so that was just kind of around me from childhood. And it was always very interesting. My ears would always perk up a lot when I hear about this. And then, like in school, I was just very interested in astronomy and the planets. And one of my early memories is making this diorama of all the planets and reading all these books about it. And I can still see those books I was reading as a kid, and if all the memories like that one always stood out of like reading about the planets, and it's just so interesting. And then just like wanting to understand like why we're here. And I think for me, like I never met my father. I don't know who he is. Tried to find him many times. So there's always this element of like, why am I here? Who am I? Where did I come from? For
Mm.
me, that I've always been curious about, and I looked at everything like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, human design, tarot, astrology, yoga, meditation, like all these are all considered eighth house things in astrology, the eighth house of transformation, witches, and and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I've always been interested in that and just always went down that path. And as a teen, or as a kid, like we'd go to the movies or we'd go rent movies at the video store, and I went through every movie in the horror section. Like that was really interesting to me, like the paranormal, the unknown, haunted houses, all that stuff.
Isn't it
So
funny how we tend to, as teens, we tend to gravitate towards that kind of genre, kind of horror. I can remember having a thing about horror, but you wouldn't get me watching a horror film now. I
no,
can't bear them.
no,
My blood pressure goes up too much. But yeah, it's just funny listening to you talking about the very same thing and thinking, oh, I wonder if we all go through that phase, as kids, as adolescents, you know.
yeah, some people do, I think, and yeah, and I was kind of a goth kid. I was like goth kids and uh, all that. Did kind of extreme stuff, like painted my nails black and wore these like all black contacts and did my hair all like spiked up and crazy. But yeah, so I had that time where I was kind of pushing my edges and looking at these things. But
Mm.
to me, like you say, astrology was as simple as like your sun sign, but that to me was very deep at the time. Like it's simple to me now, but just to know my sun sign and then my friends and their friend and all of a group, and like it's always like, tell me your birth time, tell me your birth info,
Mm.
and then I'd look on like, and then when the internet came around, that was like, now there's like websites where I could look this up. And so I'm 37, so I was on the cusp of like growing up without the internet, and then in like teens we had the internet. So yeah, I was definitely always interested in it, but early on it was just like the sun sign stuff, and then eventually the moon and rising, and then like Mercury retrograde transits, and then eventually finding my astrology teacher, learning Vedic astrology, which was very hard to find anything about, wrap my head around until I found my teacher.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that kind of that transition from Western to Vedic because I've been doing yoga for 20 odd years now, and my yoga teacher, she's an Ayurvedic practitioner, and so I know that she's really, she loves this, and I actually did contact her today and said, have you got any questions? I'm in, sort of having a chat with Jeremy from, and he's a Vedic astrologer, and her question was, is what are the differences between the two, and can we work with both? Is that possible, or is it an either or?
Yeah, so the main difference is the zodiac. So in the Western astrology, it's using what's called the tropical zodiac, which is essentially saying that every single year, the vernal equinox, which is usually like March 21st or 20th,
Yeah.
that's when the sun is in Aries, or in Aries season. And then everything proceeds from there to Pisces, all 12 signs. So it's really based on the sun and based on the seasons It's not actually based on constellations, which is, I think it would be cool if in my lifetime, maybe Western astrology could move away from even using the names of the constellations, because it's just not true. Like, it's not, the sun is not in Aries on March 21st. The sun is in Pisces. And because essentially Western astrology is using the seasons and the sun, and based on where it was 2,000 years ago, because they did not factor in the precession of the equinoxes. There's a wobble to the earth. So basically what that means is every 72 years, it moves back 1 degree. So there's 30 degrees in the sign. Aries is 30 degrees long. Taurus is 30 degrees long. And now, since 2,000 years ago, when this tropical system was established, there's now a 23-degree difference. So the sun was in Aries 2,000 years ago on March 20th. And then 72 years later, it went back 1 degree. Then 72 more years, another degree. And now we're 2,000 years later, and we're 23 degrees off from astronomy with Western astrology. So it's true to say that there's a Aries season and there's a vernal equinox energy. There's a spring energy, there's a summer energy, autumn energy. And these patterns work really well for finding patterns and qualities of people. But it's not true to say the sun is in Aries, because we can look with a telescope or our own eyes or an app and just see where the planets are. And it's one thing for the sun, but then you say like Mercury's in Aries or Mars is in Gemini or Jupiter's in Aquarius. And then especially when you get to the outer planets like Saturn, you're saying like Saturn is in Pisces or whatever, and then it's not, and that's 2.5 years where it's in the wrong sign. So with Saturn. So that to me made it really hard to keep following it, because I got really into yoga and meditation. And like, what is the truth? What is present? What is real? And then to say Saturn's in Virgo, but you can look with your own eyes and see it's actually in Leo, one sign back. Uh, so that dissonance could not be reconciled for me. I think it works for the sun and the seasons, but so all that to say is the Western astrology works as its own system, and the seasons and energies works, and you can be accurate with it. But the Vedic astrology is more true to astronomy, and that's really what astrology used to be. Is astronomy and astrology were the same thing 2,000 years ago. And Vedic did factor in the wobble of the earth, because it was passed down father to son, teacher to student, in this unbroken lineage for thousands of years. They could see these patterns that were just harder to measure back then. So when we say in Vedic, Saturn's in Aquarius right now, you can look with your own eyes, you see it. And with a telescope or with an app, you can look at the sky and see it. And through that, we are really tracking what exactly is happening. And we're not just using the signs, we're using 27 smaller signs called the nakshatras. And these are based on the lunar cycle, 27 and a half days of the moon cycle. For most women, their menstrual cycle is synced up with the moon. So our bodies are synced to it, our emotions are synced to it, the tides are synced to it. You can see it in the moon phases. And there's not just the 12 signs based on the sun and the 12 months, but there's the 27 signs based on the moon. And these are the nakshatras, and they're very, very detailed, very specific. This is not in Western astrology at all. And there's a whole mythology behind each nakshatra. And it's so cool because you get into the mythology and it's like basically describing the astronomy, but they have a story to like explain the astronomy, and lots of really cool things like this. And when you know that, now like you can know like yourself in depth, and you can know patterns more in depth. And I look at thousands of charts and look for patterns and case studies, and nakshatras are essential to that. it's basically like instead of just the 12 signs, you have 27 to work with. So you can get very detailed, very specific, and you can use both systems. But I think Western astrology is a just more broad sort of understanding of ourselves and more seasonal energies. And the Vedic is more understanding of your spiritual essence. And there's a lot of spirituality. And like if you practice, she practices Ayurveda. So there's like the gunas, the doshas, there's these qualities that are deeper into the origins of yoga and astrology and Ayurveda, which all come from this in place. So I think Vedic is a lot more resonant for me. And the more I did yoga and meditation, the more I was drawn to it. And the more I lived by it, the more my life unfolded in a positive way. So I've stuck with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And like as you say, you can get so much deeper into somebody's um, their pathway and their soul journey. I would imagine by you working with the insights from the Vedic astrology. What so we can work with both. Um, because you obviously kind of you got an understanding of the Western and how that kind of overlaps with Vedic. Um, so my next question is really it's probably a bit boring really, and you've answered this so many times, but it's a very general sort of thing that because obviously we're always subject to the influences of the planets and the energies in the cosmos. Um, and at the moment, it seems that everybody that I'm talking to, particularly on a conscious spiritual path, particularly if they're working in this field, are like they're full guns. They're just going full steam ahead. They feel like this surge of energy. It's almost like a kick up the behind. That we're being. And is that because of the fact that all the planets are direct at the moment? Do you think that's why that is, or what do you think? I mean, because it seems to me that a lot of people are feeling this kind of this momentum, this energy that's kind of almost driving us all forward. And as long as we give it direction, as long as it's got somewhere to go, that's fine. But I would imagine some people that have got no idea of what it means or how to integrate it into their lives, it could be quite alarming. It could be quite destructive in some way. Do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this happens most years for a few months, like this all planets being direct, no
Mm.
retrogrades. So it does happen fairly regularly. And when it does, yeah, there's a lot of possibility, momentum, energy. It can be too much, it can be intense, it can be overwhelming,
Mm.
but it's wonderful to just go with it and create things, start things. Yeah, but it can be overwhelming for people and it's like too much. So it really needs to be channeled and I think that's where it comes down to just like knowing yourself and like how you work best and
Mm.
how you express best and how the basically how energy wants to move through you. And
Yeah.
some people it's very task oriented, some people it's more flowing and just being present. So yeah, I think it's like how do you let energy move through you and where does it want to go? How do you want to direct it?
Yeah, that's a really good way of that's a good perspective actually. It's excellent. Thank you. And what about when planets go retrograde, like Mercury is the sort of, stereotypical one that people tend to focus on, don't they? Oh, Mercury's retrograde, my internet's gone down, I can't, I haven't heard back from such and such. The my you know, my what everything all my communication systems are broken. Oh,
Yeah.
it's because of Mercury. Let's blame it on Mercury retrograde. I mean, which seems it gets a bad rap, doesn't it? It gets a really
Yeah,
bad rap.
it does. And it happens 3 or 4 times every year for
Mm.
about 3 weeks. So it's very common. And I've tested it a lot. Like I've bought new computer during Mercury retrograde twice, and both times there were big unforeseen delays and issues with it, and
Oh, really?
it's sometimes called a shadow period. So like Mercury goes
Wow.
retrograde, so everything's just going forward, and then there's 3 weeks where it goes back, and now there's like the 3 weeks where it's coming forward again just to get back to where it started, and that's called the shadow period. So it's really like a 6 week cycle. And I've like these two examples, like with my computer, try to sell it like at the beginning of the Mercury retrograde, and then it's not fully fixed or done, or there's always delays until after that 6 weeks. I've seen like people, like I know other business owners, like launch a big product during Mercury retrograde, and then they maybe like one person I know, like halfway through this big product launch, she's like, actually, we're going to lower the price in half. Like, I'm overcharging for this. And there's all this big, like, admin hassle with all that. And basically, it did not go as she planned. And she had to kind of redo all this stuff. So, what's actually happening in a retrograde is kind of cool because you can do this with if anyone has an iPhone, they have this lock screen now that will show you like the current sky uh,
Oh,
at the
wow.
moment.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Yeah. And you'll see uh, usually what's happening, not always, but the retrograde, the Earth is closer to the planets, Earth is closer to Mercury. So those energies are stronger. We're receiving more of that influence of Mercury.
Yeah.
And it's not ever going backwards. No planet ever actually goes backwards. But it looks like it is in the same way, like when you're driving on a highway, and if you drive faster than the person next to you, it looks like they're going backwards
Backwards.
now.
Yeah. That's right.
But you're all still going forward, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with the planets. Like it's always still going around the sun, but at these times, it looks like Mercury is going backwards, and but it's not. But it's this sort of energy is closer to us, so it's it's like slowing down. It's like just telling us to slow down, go back over things, all the RE words like review, reflect, revise, and then it can go really well. And I actually really like the Mercury retrograde times because it gives me a time to like clean up things, review things, organize
Mm.
things. Oh, I had this idea 2 months ago I forgot about. I wanted to actually follow up on that. Or had these notes from this meeting a month ago that I wanted to like uh, summarize those notes and take some action based on that. So anything that's been in the works that's kind of unresolved during retrogrades is a great time to address it. And then,
So would be a good time to retreat.
yeah,
Yeah. It's another
three
RE
weeks,
word, isn't it?
exactly.
Mm. Yeah. Perfect time for retreat, actually, isn't it?
And yeah, it's specifically about like Mercury things like communication, business, commerce, but every other planet can go retrograde too, except the moon and the sun. So you get Mars retrograde, Venus retrograde, Saturn, Jupiter. And when that's happening, the things you'll want to review, revise, revisit, reflect, rest about are going to be in those topics.
Mm.
So it applies differently there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Now back to your personal journey again.
Yeah.
Um, what what have been the biggest sort of challenges for you that you've overcome up until now? The biggest ones, and as a result of that, the tools that you've used along the way to help you, you know.
Yeah. Well, big one for sure is not having a father growing up
Mm, yeah.
and just going to school and everyone talking about their dad and their family and I'm like, I don't have anything to say. I can't relate, I don't. And like I had a very tumultuous childhood and we didn't have a lot of money. I didn't get to go on like field trips or play sports, we couldn't afford that. And so it's a lot of this sort of, I would love to do that. I would love to like have this kind of relatable life to these kids, but I didn't. And then we moved a lot, so I'd get to a new school and like everyone else knows each other. They grew up from birth, and I'm just like there for 3 months and then I leave again. And so a lot of moving, a lot of feeling a little bit alien, but wanting to feel connected. And I think I ended up spending a lot of time alone, and we lived in like dangerous neighborhoods. So my mom wouldn't really want me outside. So yeah, I spent a lot of time just alone as a kid and kind of started to read books and be curious about things. And it had me kind of wanting to understand and like try to read a room and try to read people. And okay, in this environment, these are the things to say. Those, this is how to relate to these kids and to relate to this new teacher. And so I think that's helped me like learn how to really adapt to a lot of situations. And my cat needs attention again. But yeah, so there's that just from childhood, and I got really into just learning and trying to understand others and trying to understand myself. And that led to like an interest in psychology and personal growth, and then meditation and yoga and astrology. But
Did you
late, yeah,
suffer later on? Did you experience later on from the experiences of your childhood, being brought up with a lot of lack and scarcity, and like you say, that kind of disassociation with others or unrelatability to others because you weren't the same, in inverted commas, as them? Um, did it kind of catch up on you later on? Like, did you suffer from any kind of like a dark night of the soul, any kind of depression or anything like that? Because sometimes that can happen, can't it? And quite understandably so with many people.
yes, yeah. So in my teens, I started to date, and I was very emotionally distraught a lot. Like we would maybe I started dating this girl and I was like 15 or 16, and we'd have like this amazing time together, and then I'd go home and like suddenly she didn't do anything, nothing happened, but I'd just suddenly think like, oh no, this isn't gonna work, it's over, and like it's super depressed. And like
Oh,
um I had a stepdad who was bipolar in my life at this time. And
oh,
so I'd go home from school, maybe have a great day at school, and then I get home and I drank one of his sodas, and now he's like furious. And he never hit me or anything, but emotionally it was very scary.
mm.
So this my teens is like very polarizing, and I would go through like deep depression and then like try to go to school, and it was quite intense. But I found an outlet through music, and the music was like very aggressive, like rock music, play guitar, and so I felt like I could get it out there. And but yeah, this depression thing kind of hung over me for many years until my early 20s. Like I moved out from my parents. I was homeless for like 4 months. I literally like slept on streets and in bathrooms at restaurants when I was like 17. And then my friend, his mom took me in, so I stayed in their basement for a while, which is actually a very nice basement. Sounds bad, but it's very nice. And, but yeah, and then I got to be around this. This was like a healthy family dynamic, and that was really healing when I was 17 to be around. Like they were so nice to me, and I was like, his parents were together. They had a nice house. That was a trip to be around that and like see that was possible. And but then I kind of went out on my own. I was just determined to like make it as a musician. My music was so dark and heavy though. It was like I played for people and they'd just be kind of creeped out.
What did you play? What instrument did you play? Or
I'd like to produce, so I would like play keyboards and guitar and program drums.
Yeah.
Very inspired by like Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, who multi-instrumentalist and produce a lot of stuff. So yeah, I would make this music, and then I was just determined to that's my thing. So I got a job stocking shelves overnight. So I'd work all night and then get home to I lived in this band practice space, like this big building where there's no windows and it's just bands rented out to practice there so they could be really loud. And they people don't live there, but I lived there. I set a couch and all my instruments, and I would just make music, go to work, sleep, make music, go to work, sleep. And while I was working, I was listening to like Alan Watts and spiritual things and music, and then starting to apply this. And but yeah, that whole time, it was like 4 years there. I was basically in a depression, didn't have a social life, and I didn't see the sun sometimes. And I was just gonna make music as much as possible. But I was very insecure, and like I didn't play shows, I didn't share my stuff. I had this idea like I needed to make it all perfect, and then I would share it with the world. And when I eventually finally did share it, I put out this album in 2010 with my friend. Everything changed after that. And then I met this amazing woman. I started focusing on meditation and yoga and spirituality, and I got out of that darkness and heaviness and went on this whole path of like just studying yoga all the time, and didn't feel called to the music as much anymore. But it felt like this necessary cathartic thing to like make all this music and then finally overcome my insecurity to like release an album and put it out there. And then it was felt like it was just done, and I didn't want to be around like I didn't do drugs, but a lot of these musicians were super doped up a lot, and the band scene, like the bar scene, is like very competitive, and a lot of people just drinking and partying. I just felt very pulled away from all that, and never did any. I never drank or did drugs really. So yeah, the yoga scene and the yoga community really called to me, and I just went super deep into that after that, and I've definitely had challenges since then, but I think the growing up without a father, the sort of bipolar tendencies I learned from my stepdad,
Mm.
and then the depression were the hardest things. And then I've had ups and downs since then, but it's been a lot better since like I got into this like yoga as like the foundation of my life.
Yeah, it sounds like I mean, it's such an amazing tool, isn't it, yoga? When you've got that as a tool in your life, I mean, I know that even though I've been doing it for a long time, I mean, I still go to class because I find that that just helps me keep tuned in to the current, the yogic current, and it helps me keep my home practice up because, but even that flags sometimes, you know, I'm not, and I've got friends that are yoga teachers, and they'll say, you know, no, I haven't done my practice is just rubbish at the moment, you know, but it kind of goes in cycles, I find.
Yeah.
But I find when I am, because I've got a tendency to burn out, like a lot of Sagittarians, and and I know that when I'm heading for burnout, I need to head for my yoga mat because it's just that feeling of being grounded. Even though I've got a fairly grounded life, I spend a lot of time outdoors, you know, with dogs, and being outside in nature grounds me pretty much. But you know, when you're sort of in your head all the time, I'm a writer and I'm like you, you know, I'm a BBD student. So
Yeah.
there's that kind of pressure to keep going and keep producing and keep creating, whatever that is, you know, and I'm fairly early on in my stages of creating a business. So it's all consuming for me at the moment, and I'm finding that I need to be grounded far more than I've ever felt that I needed to be grounded before. You know,
Right.
I need that yoga mat. I need that time to just sit and because otherwise my brain doesn't switch off. I mean, I noticed on your website, Jeremy, that you've got some interesting things like about distractions and the fact that, we are, and I'm always saying this to my students, we're completely bombarded every day with sensory overload, aren't we? And on your, let me just refer to my notes, 80, on average, 80 notifications a day bombard us digitally.
Yeah.
And that is a huge amount of, I mean, I can't even stand my notifications, but I have my phone on silent all the time because it just drives me up the wall.
Right.
Um, and I really detest the fact that I am attached to this thing, you know. Um, it and sometimes I just wish. I mean, even the last few days, I've been thinking, oh, I could just do with the social media break, you know, and just completely detach from it. Um, but also, what else it says on your website as well that I thought was great was that when we're aligned with our purpose, you know, um, which obviously we become more aligned, don't we? If we're on that conscious spiritual path and we're kind of getting it right most of the time, and we're discovering our tools, like you've discovered yoga and your astrology, then we find that we move into harmony with our soul essence. You know, that's alignment, isn't it? But when we're
Yeah.
out of alignment, um, because and you were saying on your website that it lowers the risk of heart disease when we're in alignment and also increases our lifespan. So the opposite of that, when we're in misalignment, is that we're not following our hearts and that it's draining our life force out of us. And I always think those are kind of major symptoms that are glaringly obvious. You know, when you feel everything feels like a struggle, when life's draining you, you know, when you feel kind of sad a lot because you're really not following your heart. You know, you're not enjoying yourself. You're not living from the heart. And I was wondering about you, and I thought, well, I wonder what you do. I know you've got your yoga, and that's, you know, a great stabilizer. But what else do you do to manage all these weird, wonderful distractions that we are bombarded by 24/7?
Yeah. They're wonderful things, you know. I remember when I was a kid, I just kind of dreamed of things like this, like the iPhone and the iPad and the
Yeah.
watches. Oh, I wish there was some way I could just, I wish I
Do a
just had a
video
camera.
call. Through a
Yeah.
video call. I
Yeah.
can remember before we had video calls thinking, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if you could actually see somebody while you're talking to them, like
Right.
on the phone, but actually see them. And now we're doing it. And it's like
Yes.
part of our everyday technology. It's like normalized.
Totally. You know, and I remember like when it, like 2007 or 8, when the iPhone first came out, the idea that you could be hanging out with friends and talk about something and you're not sure, like, oh, what actor was in that movie, or what's this? How do you pronounce this? You could just Google it now in your pocket.
Oh,
You know,
I
it's
know.
amazing. I still remember that feeling of like how amazing this was to have this
Yeah,
tool now. And then yeah, it's so well designed that now it's hard to ever not use it.
I know. I
But
know.
but yeah, so for me, it comes down to now the intention, because there's that novelty that's still there to some degree for maybe our generations, but I know some of the younger generations, maybe some people don't have that sense of like they don't want to be on their phone all the time and they want to be just living. And so there is still that novelty of like, you know, I could just look up anything. I could just go on YouTube and there's going to be a good recommendation of a video. But to me, it's just got to be intentional. And I, I, um, I resisted doing any psychedelics for a long time because my teacher was like, you can get there through yoga. You don't need any external thing. So for like 10 years, all I did was yoga meditation, never touched any psychedelics. But then I read the book How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, and he talks about trying psychedelics. And he talks so much about how important your intention is. And I've learned, and trying psychedelics since then, is like your intention 100% creates your experience on substance, like mushrooms or whatever. And if your intention is to like learn about love, you'll experience love in every possible, so many insights will come through about this. And I've had so many powerful insights like this. But it had me realize like this is a lot like a Google search. This is a lot like life. Like when we were both in BBD, and like I set a financial goal when I first did it. And that like every day I would come back to that intention. Okay, what's going to help me reach this financial goal? And and then ask it again, like a Google search, like I'm typing into Google, what will help me reach this goal today? But I'm asking the universe.
Mm.
And that might involve looking on my phone for something. It might involve not using my phone at all that day. So in that sense, the device now becomes secondary to the intention. And, the reason I brought up psychedelics is because it's so in your face of like exactly what you ask for comes to you, and you can't deny it. It's like, it's exactly what I asked for in the intention. And I think life actually is like that, but it's like turned down a lot. And it's not as intense in everyday life. We don't see it as much. But if I say, like, I want to learn about like how to have a better relationship, and then I get this synchronicity here, and the song says the same thing, and this book says the same thing, the universe is responding to my intention. And if I stay tuned to it, I'm going to get the outcome I'm looking for or the lesson I need. And now the phone just becomes one of infinite tools. I could journal, I could watch a movie, I could hang out with friends, I could go on my phone and scroll social media. It's just one thing I can do that's either going to move me towards my intention or not. So if my intention is like a financial goal or personal goal, now that is guiding me. But if you don't have an intention, that's where the phone just like will just take over, and the algorithm will now just keep showing you things you're interested in. And it is so good. They designed it so well to basically harvest your attention.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Just keep you, their whole goal is like minutes on the app. Like that's what their main metric for YouTube is, like how many minutes do they spend on YouTube? And that's what
yeah,
they want to keep increasing. And they're really, really good at it. And I think everybody, but especially me, like I'm like, yeah, oh, cool. That's interesting. Okay, I'll watch that. Oh, that's interesting. But it's like kind of random and kind of pointless. So if I have an intention, now it's so much more useful, and it's like I can go in there and learn the thing I need to learn, apply it to my intention, and then get out and go to the
yeah,
next thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I must admit, I try not to um, take my phone everywhere, but it seems like that is becoming less and less of a reality now. I mean, I take it out with the dogs because, oh, just in case something happens, because we live in a fairly remote area, and where I take the dogs is on the beach, and if something happened like a snake, they got a snake bite or something, and I didn't have my phone on me, so I feel that I need to have it for that, so I take my phone out with the dogs. But like for example, when I did some yoga the other day, I thought I'm not taking my phone in there, because sometimes I take it in there and I might listen to a yoga nidra, on YouTube, just to chill me out, get me, after I've done my little kriya, um, or just a meditation. But even that can become a bit habitual, can't it? And then I think, no, no, I'm not taking any. I don't want any digital device near me. I just want me and my mat, my candles, my crystals, my incense. That's it, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but
Right.
but
Comes back
yeah,
to your intention. Yeah. Like what do you
exactly.
want to experience there? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So so how does if I when I talk about magic, Jeremy, what does magic mean to you? Because magic, everybody I speak to has got a different idea of what magic means to them and how it expresses in their lives. So what does magic mean to you?
Well, I actually got really into magic as a kid. I forgot about that.
Did
I
you?
loved magic tricks. Yeah. And that's also very eighth house astrology, occult, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very amateur magician. Um, so to me, it's like unexplainable and a good magic trick. Like I do it and you're just like kind of delighted and amazed. Like, it's like how you could not explain like how did he do that? And but there is actually like a secret force of like there's a method to it. So maybe this applies to, magic in life of like when you experience it, when I experience something I think that was magical, it's like awe and reverence. Like,
Mm.
how did that happen? Amazing. But there may be some underlying thing of like some secret to how it worked. I don't know. But I think like synchronicities are magic. Like let's say I go in my journal and I write something like a specific phrase, very personal to me, and then I go like on a meeting here and then you say that same phrase that was in my journal. Like how is that? And then not just that, then I hear it later on a video or something. Someone else says a totally unrelated thing, and it's like now coming back to me. So those synchronicities, I think, are really good guides of like you're really tuned into a frequency, and I see those as good feedback from the universe of like I'm on the track of something, yeah, either intentional or not intentional. And yeah, I think it's very subjective of like what you might call magic in your life. And to me, I guess I don't use that word too much, but I do look for synchronicities and things that are beyond like what could have been explained. Like I'll just say 2 weeks ago, I saw my friend. I got this new motorcycle, and turns out she has the same motorcycle. And she said to me, my boyfriend works on motorcycles. If you ever need a mechanic for anything." And then 2 weeks later, or what just happened, like my motorcycle broke down. And because of that chance encounter with her, I know her boyfriend works on motorcycles and has the same one. So I called him right away. So there's a level of magic to that of like, it's so convenient that I ended up seeing her and she had this sort of puzzle piece that if I didn't know that, I would be still kind of struggling of like, what do I do? Because it's a small town here. It's like hard to get. If you go to the repair shop, it takes like a month. So there's this sort of magic of like meeting the right person at the right
Yeah.
time, being in the place,
Kind of
and that,
energetic match.
yes,
Mm.
totally. I
Mm.
met her through this training we both did, and this following the sort of call of like, oh, that sounds interesting, or
Yeah.
in that specific moment too, when I saw her, I was getting on my motorcycle to leave, and I just sat there for 20 seconds, like for no reason. I just sat still. Like there's this sort of energy that's like, wait. And I sit there, and then she shows up, and then she tells me this important piece of information that helps me later. So there's an element of that of like, sometimes I'll just feel this call, just wait, or go now, or send this person a message, or say this thing in a reading. And these kind of
Mm.
things are just always kind of at the tip of our finger, I think.
Yeah, and like you say, it's a lot of it most of it is intentional, conscious, deliberate, but some of it isn't, is it? Some of it's
Yeah.
unconscious. Some of the
Yeah.
some of that unconscious energy is playing out somehow, and I think that's when it's like when it shows up in synchronicity. Yeah, to me that's the magic happening. That's magic at work. It's that kind of transformative energy, no matter what way, shape, or form it comes. It can be a synchronistic meeting or a connection with somebody, or it can be as beautiful as a sunset. I think magic to me expresses itself in so many ways. It's unlimited, and
Yes.
it really is, isn't it? And when you start thinking in terms of the cosmos and the planets and how that affects us, then here we are, full circle back to astrology. And
Right.
yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I can see why you've um you've kind of almost done a circle really into what you're doing at the moment. And and how is that going, Jeremy? How is your your kind of vocation going? Because I know you do most of it online, don't you? You do your
Yeah.
readings and your teachings. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been teaching yoga since 2011 and studying astrology in depth since 2006. But, I had this call, like part of the reason I started online is like my first yoga teacher, like 2008, I went to a class, loved it. Oh, this is great. And went to another class. And then she said, okay, that's it. I'm moving away now. And I was in Minneapolis, and I was like, oh, this teacher is great. I want to go every day. But now she's gone. So I went up to her and I said, do you have anything like online? It was like 2008, like nothing was really online yet. And she said, no, but if I ever do, I'll let you know. So it sort of planted the seed in me to like create online yoga classes, or that I wished it existed. I wasn't ready to teach yet. But then a couple years later, I took my yoga teacher training. And then right away, I was like, I want to make online yoga stuff. And I resisted it. And I had that call and I resisted it. I set up the video and then freeze and not do it. And I was on YouTube back when it started. Like I'm always like at the top of the edge of these like technology things. I have the Gemini moon. So 2007, I was watching YouTube videos, and 2011, I was trying to make them, and it's like maybe make one and then delete it. And, so I had that call, and eventually, by took another 6 years. In 2017, I started the Quiet Mind Yoga podcast. And my goal with that was just to share my classes and just show up every week, and started to build an online audience there. So by the time 2020 happened and the pandemic, I had already had podcasts going. I already had online audiences. And so I could just create an online yoga membership and then do online readings. So I was ready for 2020, and it actually turned out to be my most lucrative year yet and most successful year, biggest audience, my best offers. And then it just has continued to improve since then. So it's been really good, and I'm able to live anywhere I want and work. I'm my own boss, and I'm very, very fortunate and grateful. And yeah, James Wedmore's teaching has helped me a lot with the business side of things. And I actually did a lot of business and sales training along the way too that helped a lot with other teachers. And yeah, everything's online. So I have online yoga membership, online astrology readings. I teach yoga teacher training online, astrology mentorship. So a lot of big containers, and I've just been in a lot of containers myself for about 10 years there. I was just student mode as much as possible, also teaching, but like always in a training. And even now I'm always in a training still, but yeah, it's going very well, and I love it, and I get to work with brilliant people. And later today, I'll be leading my year 2 astrology mentorship students, and we're talking about the nakshatras, and just the funnest thing in the world, because we get to study people. And that's magic too. It's like you look at
Mm.
10 people who have the same placements, and you can see the patterns. And then when I go to do a reading for another person who has the same placements, I can say something like this. Like my first reading, my astrologer was like, it shows here you would not know your father, and you'd have difficulty ever finding your father. And I was like, how do you know that? How do you see this? I want to learn your secrets. So that to me was like a magic trick. So that's what I get to do now. And I get to look at charts and then, you know, validate their life experience and give them tools to work with and help them understand themselves.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And it's so rewarding, isn't it, when you're teaching your passion. something that you've studied, and you've learned off of, you've done your training, you've done your innings, but you're able to pass that and share that with others. I mean, I don't think there's any better reward really than working with students. I find that I learn so much off of my students as well, because it's never ending, is it? The learning process.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and also, so can people come to you? So I know that you do readings for people, like one-to-one astrology readings, Vedic astrology readings, but can people train to be a Vedic astrologer with you?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh, great.
yeah, that's what I do in the mentorship program. We just
Okay.
started the sixth class, just started last week. So the seventh class will start in August 2024, and we'll probably continue in this cycle like January and August is when the classes will start. And so people listening in the future, they can go to quietmindastrology.com and join the waitlist for the mentorship. So I call it's currently a mentorship because I go very deep with people. Uh, it might change in the future. I don't know, but six classes now, and yeah, in the 6 months, people can go from relative beginner to able to pull up any chart and start making accurate readings. It's very cool. You learn so much about yourself along the way, but then you learn
Mm,
also how to interpret charts for others and transits and the timeline of things.
yeah.
'Cause I love to like organize information and simplify things. So I think I've done a pretty good job of simplifying it and making it very easy to start applying to your life and others.
Yeah, because that was going to be my final question, really, was how do you integrate all this into a practical everyday life?
Yeah,
And it, because I teach the tarot, and for me that's that's a complex enough subject, 78 cards, and but like you, my intention is always to create and the most simplest way, but you have to structure it. There is structure, but to make it fun and easy for people to understand and learn, you know. Um, and like you say, you've probably got a gift doing that. That's one of your skills, is being able to relay that to other people in easily understandable language, because it is a language, isn't it, Jeremy? You're teaching somebody a foreign language.
exactly.
Mm.
Yes, and I'm learning Spanish more here in Mexico. And there's a lot of times where I try to talk to somebody and I don't know what they're saying, so we can't have a conversation. And I'm kind of like a baby. Like when you try to talk to a baby, you don't have the same language even if you both speak English.
Yeah.
So it's very humbling, and it is very much like astrology. It's like you look at a chart. When I first looked at charts, I would go blank. It's like I don't know what to say. I know the sun. I know this. Okay, sun and Taurus. I can talk about that. Everything else, I was like blank. So there's a whole language that was missing. And like
Mm.
here in Mexico, as I learn more Spanish, now it opens up like this more connections. And if I can have a conversation with
Mm.
somebody, now we can have more of a heart connection. We can share ideas. It's
Mm.
now there's this energy flow that wasn't there. I couldn't speak the language. And this is what's true with astrology, I think. It's like once you learn your chart, you can read it like a language. Now there's this energy flow and there's these messages from the universe coming to you of like, you have this strength, you have this weakness. Like for me, I have like Moon and Ardra, which lends itself to like my more depressive youth, but also gives me like this deep compassion and deep listening ability for others, deep psychological interest. And I know in my chart, like I have good entrepreneurial skills and I do better to work as my own boss rather than for others. And I really struggled when I was working for others. I really thrive when I work for myself. And so if opportunities come up where I'm in this position of like employee for others, at this point, like I know that's not gonna work out for me.
Mm.
Or if if I get to do more research in my work, I know that's gonna play to my strengths.
Mm.
So it's it's a lot like any other typology. Like if you know your Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, you know you have certain strengths. Like if you're more of an introvert, you're going to thrive with time to be alone and recharge. And you can see this in astrology too, but you just, some people might know these other systems better. And it's just such a wonderful tool of like just knowing yourself, knowing your gifts, and knowing timing of things too. It shows this in the chart. And I feel like I'm in a position in my work where I get to use all of my gifts, and I'm getting better at delegating my weaknesses and having others where it's their gift do that, have them do that thing. And then I can focus on what I'm uniquely good at and help others with that.
Mm. And do you find, I'm just thinking of with me and my tarot work, I find that, of course it's a tool of divination as is astrology, I think. Um, and that it sharpens people up intuitively. It really does hone their intuitive skills, but it's not a replacement for intuition, is it? It's not. And I think I've heard you say that as well on your podcast, because that's important, isn't it? Really, that people don't
Yeah,
use it just as a crutch to support them, but just
totally.
yeah,
Totally. Yeah. Intuition trumps astrology. So you can look at the stars and the chart and the map, and it will say, like, this kind of person will be an ideal partner for you. But if your intuition says to date someone else who's kind of outside that box,
mm,
trust it. And maybe it'll be a lifelong marriage. Maybe it'll be a dramatic blow up dating fling. Who knows? But like your intuition is calling you there for some sort of lesson, some sort of
yeah,
experience. And I
yeah,
always trust that. Like trust if I look at the astrology and say like, don't buy this car or don't take this job, but your intuition's like, I don't agree with him. Like, I want to take this job or I want to move to this place. 100% follow your intuition because there's some deeper knowledge. And I'm just a point on the map. I just have my limited perspective. I don't see everything. I don't have all the answers. I have my experience and perspective, but any astrologer just has another perspective. So
yeah.
nobody has all the answers. But your intuition is like this divine calling and messenger. And sometimes it's cloudy. Sometimes it's not tuned. It's not, it's like, sometimes it's broken. Your antenna is broken. You're not sure, especially if you're eating a lot of junk food or watching a lot of.
Yeah,
I watch, same like you said at the beginning. If I watch a horror movie now, that's like imprinted on my subconscious for like 3 weeks.
no,
Ugh,
no, I
not good.
know. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, so and it's back to again managing our energy, isn't it, really? Because
Yeah,
if our energy is clear and as as um as clean as we can, as pure as we can keep it, then
yeah,
we're gonna hear those signals. We're gonna sense our intuition when it speaks to us. But if it's like you say, if it's cloudy because we've been eating too much sugar or not getting enough sleep or being in the wrong company, happens, doesn't it? Watching
yeah,
too much crap on the telly or whatever, exposing ourselves to any kind of toxicity, um, that's when we don't hear that little voice inside us that says, no, don't do that or do it or whatever it is. Yeah. Oh, honestly, I could chat to you for hours, Jeremy. I think that, it all sounds so interesting. And I wish you the greatest of I'm not going to say luck, but the best energy moving forwards,
yeah.
full of optimism and expansion and growth and yeah, I'll put all your links in the show description. But just
Great.
say again, just before we finish, where people can find you online, please. Yeah,
Quietmindastrology.com. There's
yeah,
a podcast I do every week, the Friday forecast with
yeah.
all the transits going on this week and how to work with it. And there's a 101 course you can check out there as well. That's always available. And then the mentorship I open twice a year if you want to go deeper into your chart and understanding astrology and be a certified Vedic astrologer.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to tell. Well, I know that my yoga teacher's going to listen to this, and she's.
Yeah,
I know that she's wanting to do something like that. So it'd It'd be interesting to see what she says after she's listened to it, because
Right.
she always loves learning. She's a great learner. You know, she's a great student as well as being a great teacher. So, but it goes hand in hand with being a teacher, doesn't it? You know, wanting to keep learning. I think it does anyway.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, yeah. So thanks ever so much for taking the time out of your day and your busy schedule.
Thank you.
And yeah, I'd invite anybody that's listening to move in Jeremy's direction. If this resonates with you, then he's your man. He's your man. So, so what's Spanish for thank you very much, Jeremy, and goodbye?
Muchas gracias. And we say ciao a lot here, which I think is not Spanish,
Oh,
but that's like a kind of sweet way of saying see you later. Or goodbye, adios is a little more firm. And
okay.
then, yeah, there's also hasta luego. It's like I'll see you later.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that. Say that again. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Ah, okay. Muchas gracias. And hasta luego, Jeremy.
Hasta luego. All right.
Ciao.